thinking about what the message that you need to deliver. We'll take unlimited written testimony, and would certainly encourage that. We want to do that so we can hear from many people as possible. We'll be relying on our moderator, Hannah Carter, Dean of the University of Maine Extension. Hannah, thank you so much for serving that capacity and for your leadership role with the Extension program. And she's going to keep us on time today as our moderator, and we're so appreciative, Hannah, for all that you do for agriculture, and thank you for your help today. I'd like to assure you there will be plenty more opportunities to share your feedback with us, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Be sure to grab a comment card from our staff if you'd like to share your feedback today. That said, the comment card normally has a QR code on it. I haven't seen them yet today, or just a place to be able to write in your comment. We'll take it in any fashion and form, because your voice is important to take back to Washington and to have at the table as we construct this 2023 Farm Bill. That said, if we're unable to get to you in the speaker queue today, my staff will be taking these comment cards back to DC to review. And with that, I'm going to kick things over to the member of Congress here from Maine, who does such a great job and quite frankly has been a great hostess for us for a few words.
Thank you very much, GT. Oh, do I got to turn it on? It's complicated. I'm very grateful to the chair for choosing to bring the committee here for this listening session. We have so many wonderful, unique farmers in Maine, and I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to see the great things that we're doing here in Maine, as well as the challenges that we have. So first, thank you to the chair. Thank you to all of my colleagues. As you can see, they're from California, Indiana, Massachusetts, and we don't hold it against you that we had to wait till 1820 to get free. But no, it's really been wonderful to have them here. We've really had a good time showing them some of the farms in Maine. I want to especially thank Goranson Farm, Apple Creek Farm, and Wolf's Neck, which we were able to quickly visit this morning. Also yesterday, we got to visit the Turner Farm where I live, but also some aquaculture producers. So thank you to all of them. Aquaculture is another important part of the Agriculture Committee, and it often gets overlooked in some of the other states. So thank you very much. And thank you, too, to the committee, my own staff, who support me on the committee, my own staff here in my office in Maine, who have been working very hard to make sure we open the doors to Maine, but also the committee staff who have to sort through all of the complicated things for the Farm Bill and also for the listening session today. So we are really grateful for all the work they're doing, making sure that as many of you as possible get a chance to speak. If I could, I'd go around the room and recognize all of you. I see many familiar faces, and I know how hard all of you are working, and many of you I've had the chance to work on since some of the very early days, going back to 1970s, when I was part of the early leadership of MOFGA and one of those early Back to the Landers in Maine. So I've had a chance to work with a lot of people over the years, and I'm very grateful to the time I had in the Maine legislature, but now to serve both on the Agriculture Committee and the Agricultural Appropriations Committee, and to represent farmers from across the state. Maine has such diverse agriculture and such a long history, from blueberries to potatoes to our small, diverse farmers, mixed livestock growers, organic farmers, Somali Bantu farmers. It's just an amazing state, all that we have going on, and we can't even fill it all, be able to describe it all in a day with only 3 hours here. But I'm going to speak very briefly just to make sure that all of you have the time here, and just thank you once again for the work you do in Maine agriculture. Look forward to supporting all of your concerns and needs in this upcoming Farm Bill, and doing the best we can to put everything into there that would make a difference for our state. So thanks for what you're doing. Look forward to continue working with you. Share your thoughts and ideas with my office anytime. Anything that doesn't get discussed today, we want to hear about it all. So thank you very much.
Chellie, thank you so much. Now we're going to turn it over to our moderator, Mrs. Carter. Hannah, take it away.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome not only members of the committee to the great state of Maine, but to this beautiful Freeport High School Performing Arts Center for our listening session here today. Also, I'd also like to welcome you to summer, as apparently you all brought it with you in your travels this weekend. Chairman Thompson, thank you, and to the members of the House Ag Committee for joining us to hear the needs and concerns of our farmers, producers, providers, community members, and others as you consider the upcoming Farm Bill. It's an honor to host each member of this committee. Thank you all for making the trek to north to the way life should be. Representative Pingree, I also want to thank you for your tireless advocacy on behalf of Maine and all of our industries, organizations, and individuals who are represented here in your district and in all corners of this state, and for your service on this committee and for your work in hosting today's session. I'd also like to give a shout out to all the staff who made this possible. I'd also like to let you all know if you see me duck behind the curtain, it's almost like the wise and powerful wizard is behind there, but it's really members of the staff who are preparing the cards that I will be reading from today. So again, just want to give a shout out to the staff who made this possible. I am Hannah Carter. I'm a proud 4-H alumni. I'm the daughter of a potato farmer in Aroostook County, which unfortunately is not part of your tour today, but also I'm a lover of Maine agriculture. In my day job, I'm the Associate Provost for Online and Continuing Education and Dean of Cooperative Extension. And every day I get to work with everybody who you see in front of you and thousands of others as we think about how to move our great state forward. It was built on our heritage industries of farming, fisheries, and forestry. They are our foundation, and they are indeed our future. In my role as Dean of Cooperative Extension, I applaud the leaders who you will hear from today, and again, think about how we can move this state forward. I was given a few minutes for my welcoming remarks. I'm going to cede my time to give you all the time today to share your remarks, and probably like many of you, I need to get to the hayfield later because it's actually a nice day and we're way behind in our haying as well. So with that, I will give you the procedures of our afternoon. We have one microphone that you can see in the middle of our event center. What we will do is I will introduce 3 speakers at a time. I would like you to know that I'm reading from what you put in your RSVP form or at the front table. So I may not get your proper title correctly. It depends on if you abbreviated or did not share your whole title. So I just want to apologize in advance. I probably did know better, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to read what's on the card because I'm trying to also follow instructions. I also would reiterate the 2-minute time commitment that we all have. They have given me a gavel, which is a mistake of epic proportions, because I will use it, and it's probably going to be awkward the first 1 or 2 times, but then probably people will realize that I am actually going to stick to the 2-minute mark. I actually have my handy-dandy iPhone stopwatch up here as well, so let's try to adhere to the 2 minutes so we can get everybody who would like to make remarks the opportunity to do so. I do apologize in advance if I do need you to wrap up and I make those overt gestures for you to do so. So I think we're all good on the instructions. This is going to be a fun afternoon. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm pleased to introduce our first 3 speakers. They will be Amanda Beal, Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, Dr. Joan Farini-Mundy, the President of the University of Maine, and Sarah Alexander, the Executive Director of Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association.
Good afternoon. Oh, I'm not sure, is this on? Can you hear? I don't think this is on. Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson and members of the House Agriculture Committee. My name is Amanda Beal. I'm the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. I also am honored to be serving this year as the President of the Northeast Association of Departments of Agriculture, and I serve on the board of NASDA, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. It has been a great pleasure spending time with you all today and getting to know you a bit as we went on farm tours. I'm really pleased with what you were able to hear on those tours. I think a lot of topics were introduced that you will hear a lot more about here from many people who have come to speak. I'm very grateful that you've come to Maine, that you've spent time here, and that you are holding this listening session. I'm also incredibly grateful for Congresswoman Pingree and all of her advocacy on our behalf in DC. And so I just want to say a few things, very high level. That we, of course, support a robust and fully funded farm bill that serves those who grow, harvest, and consume food, the landowners and foresters who manage the forest land, and businesses further up the supply chain. We all know that this package of legislation has tremendous impact on farming and forestry livelihoods, how food is grown, and how it is managed. To that end, the Farm Bill and contributing to that process is one of our biggest priorities this year. We have also held some listening sessions over the last 10 or so months and are putting that data together, and we'll be very happy to share that with you. That's been through both listening sessions and a survey that we held open for farmers for quite a number of months, and foresters and others who are impacted by the Farm Bill. So I know, as you heard on the farm tours today, our agricultural activity in Maine yields a diverse array of products spanning the geographic scope of our state. And while you might not hear directly from every sector today, as Dr. Carter noted, we've had a lot of rain and a lot of really hot weather. And so the weather seems to have just turned, and I think there are a lot of farmers and folks in forestry who just feel like they need to be out taking advantage of this. But hopefully we'll help to capture some more of those voices in the materials that we share with you at a later date. And I also just wanted to point out, today discussions have touched on a number of different issues: PFAS, climate resilience, soil health, agroforestry, land access and development pressure, succession planning, innovative wood technology, and more. And as I'm looking around the room, I'm really excited for you to hear from everyone here because there's just a tremendous expertise. So thank you again for coming, and we will provide the results of our Farm Bill listening sessions and surveys at a later date.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson and esteemed members of the House Committee on Agriculture. I want to recognize our terrific host, Congresswoman Pingree, and thank her for all that she does for the state of Maine and for our nation. My name is Joan Farini-Mundy, and I'm the president of the University of Maine, as well as Vice Chancellor for Research for the University of Maine System. The reauthorization of the Farm Bill, including increased funding, will position our land-grant university for even greater state and national impact, including through UMaine's cooperative extension offices statewide and our Maine Agriculture and Forestry Experiment Station research farms, forests, gardens, and greenhouses. These organizations work with folks across this room today, and we couldn't be more proud than to be representing the importance of agriculture in the state of Maine. Investments in universities reach many, many stakeholders, and they are amplified and they are leveraged. They are evidence-based. They are a good bet for agriculture, and we encourage this as well. Most critical to the impact that we wish to have as a university are research, outreach and capacity, infrastructure, and workforce development. Research in climate science, clean energy technologies, bio-based materials, aquaculture, food systems, and more are signature strengths of the University of Maine. Our track record has already enabled us, with community project funding investment secured by our delegation, to establish a PFAS testing lab and technical assistance program for farmers. Outreach and capacity programs, equally important, they set up the foundation for fruitful collaborations like the one UMaine has with Wyman's for a wild blueberry research field site. With similar investments, we can help farmers and foresters use evidence-based practices for carbon sequestration and storage. APLU estimates an $11.5 billion backlog of deferred maintenance at U.S. public university agriculture research and teaching facilities, highlighting infrastructure investment needs. A rustic farm in northern Maine, home to our world-class potato breeding program where the caribou russet was developed, is a great example of such an important facility. And a well-prepared, diverse workforce is essential for progress. Through the New Beginnings for Tribal Students program, Maine is supporting university students serving as mentors to younger Wabanaki students to help Native American students persist in STEM. Yet there is always more to do, and we appreciate your tremendous work and support. The researchers and innovators at the University of Maine stand ready to be a resource to you, as you continue your critical work. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and we'll be happy to follow up on any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson and members of the House Agriculture Committee, and thank you for being here, and thank you, Representative Pingree, for your leadership. I'm Sarah Alexander, the Executive Director of the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. Over the last 50 years, we've helped transform the agricultural landscape in Maine. We've had nearly 400 farmers go through our USDA-funded beginning farmer programs, and more than 90% of them are still farming today, many of them right here in Maine. We're proud that we're one of the few states in the country where the average age of farms is going down, and we have one of the highest percentages of organic farms per capita, with more women in farming, more Black, Indigenous, people of color, and new American communities joining our agricultural sector every day. We have over 530 certified organic farms with over 60 million in annual sales. And the organic sector nationally has 63 billion in annual sales, with demand for organic products outpacing supply. Expanding funding for organic programs will benefit the health of our people, our environment, and our economy. In the upcoming Farm Bill, I urge you to include the Opportunities for Organic Act, which strengthens the Organic Certification Cost Share Program and adds flexible funding to support organic transition and expansion, organic supply chain development, and technical assistance, with an emphasis on resources for producers in regions that haven't received a fair share of public investments in agriculture. Research is key to tackling many challenges facing farmers, and organic research benefits all. As we've heard, organic production practices are climate smart and can be adopted by all farmers to help improve healthy soil. Representative Pingree's Agricultural Resilience Act sets a bold vision of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture by 2040. Organic agriculture is climate friendly and an important part of that goal. The bill also gives farmers greater access to seeds and animal breeds that are regionally adapted. Organic dairy farmers across the country are facing severe economic challenges. The Farm Bill should provide long-needed support for the organic dairy market. We know firsthand in Maine that a farmer safety net will mean that farmers aren't left holding the bag for PFAS contamination, and we urge you to include the Relief for Farmers Hit with PFAS Act, which helps farmers address PFAS contamination through testing, income replacement, remediation strategies, and research. Organic farming is climate smart, it's healthy for people and the environment. We hope you'll continue to invest in organic and conservation programs so that we can achieve true sustainability. Thank you for being here.
Thank you to our first three speakers for leading the way as far as time goes. I appreciate that. I didn't have to bring the gavel out early. That would have been really awkward, especially if I had to do it with the president of my own institution. So very much appreciate. Feel like that might have been horribly awkward. So thank you all for leading the way in keeping us to time. Our next three speakers will be Eric Venturini with the Wild Blueberry Commission of Maine, Abby Farnham with Maine Farmland Trust, and Rachel Talbot Ross with the Maine Black Community Development.
Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, esteemed members of the committee, thank you so much for giving us this time here today. My name is Eric Venturini. I'm the Executive Director of the Wild Blueberry Commission of Maine. Maine is the only significant producer of wild blueberries in the United States. You might recall last week you had the opportunity, some of you, maybe some of you for the first time, to taste wild blueberries as you celebrated July National Blueberry Month. You might recall that Maine wild blueberries were the ones that tasted the best. Our industry is capable of producing more than 100 million pounds of Maine wild blueberries every year, and we provide 2 to 5 million pounds directly to school children annually. We've got twice the antioxidants of ordinary blueberries and are all around the best blueberry that money can buy, a statement that any Mainer will wholeheartedly agree with. 485 farms make up this industry, and that number includes hundreds of multi-generational family farms with traditions that span 8 or even more generations. It includes Wyman's, a representative of which is here today, the #1 brand of frozen fruit in the United States. It includes the Passamaquoddy Wild Blueberry Company, which manages thousands of acres and can claim a cultural tradition of wild blueberry harvest that goes back thousands of years. It includes dozens upon dozens of small producers that sell wild blueberries fresh, frozen, powdered, as fruit leather, pies and jams, and more. Maine produces 10% of all American blueberries annually, and that 10% is wild. The Maine industry, like many ag sectors, is seeking a farm bill that helps to address our sector's challenges and provides opportunities to help our producers grow, innovate, and adapt. Got a couple of targeted priorities here that I'd like to share with you today. And one is continued improvement, support, and inflationary-based increases for existing specialty crop and land-grant institution programs. And those are to increase base funding for ag research stations and cooperative extension, the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, the Value-Added Producer Grants, and the IR4 project. We also encourage you to have increased focus on in this Farm Bill on supporting producers' efforts to adapt to and increase resiliency to climate change, not just on mitigation. Specifically, in regard to sustainable water source development and irrigation. And then third, we ask you to help address labor challenges. It's not often something that's focused on in the Farm Bill, but I think there's a couple places that we might find opportunities to address this significant and growing challenge. And that's one, the USDA Rural Development Program has two programs, a grant and a loan program, 514 and 516, that currently allow construction of farm worker housing, but it can only be used by domestic farm workers. That law severely limits the utility of these programs, and we recommend expanding it to be more inclusive of the diversity and origins of workers on American farms, and therefore more appropriate and beneficial for American farmers. We're hoping for research and development, R&D, for labor-saving automation and mechanization technologies. And we're hoping for assistance for farmers to afford those labor-saving technologies.
And Eric, I may ask you if you'll wrap it up.
That was my last line.
Okay.
Dean Carter, thank you.
Sorry, Eric, I had to do it with somebody, so.
Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson and members of the House Committee on Agriculture. My name is Abby Farnham, and I'm providing comments today on behalf of Maine Farmland Trust, a member-powered statewide organization that works to protect farmland, support farmers, and advance the future of farming. Thank you for this incredible opportunity to share our perspective on priorities for the next Farm Bill. Our vision for the next Farm Bill includes well-funded and efficiently managed federal programs that are accessible and beneficial to small and medium-sized farms and specialty crop producers, like many in Maine. We often hear from farmers about the need for different forms of technical assistance and know that more targeted support is needed in the next Farm Bill as farmers grow and diversify their businesses, seek out new markets, and are forced to adapt in the face of climate change. Further, we need the next Farm Bill to include a stronger and more accessible safety net for diversified farms facing extreme weather events. And given the complexity of many federal programs funded under the Farm Bill, farmers also tell us how beneficial it would be to have guidance in navigating available resources and determining which programs are best suited to address their needs. Farmland in Maine is at risk. The 2017 Census of Agriculture showed that between 2012 and 2017, Maine lost more than 10% of its farmland. Access to farmland is becoming increasingly difficult for new and established farmers alike in Maine, and barriers are especially high for low-income, beginning, and historically underserved producers. In the face of these threats, the next Farm Bill must invest in farmland protection and prioritize farmland affordability and access, including by streamlining and improving implementation of the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, such as by fixing Buy, Protect, Sell so that it can be used as an essential farmland access tool. Finally, the 2023 Farm Bill should respond to the experience of Maine farmers and the knowledge that PFAS contamination is widespread across the country by providing vital financial and technical resources to farmers affected by contamination. We're grateful for the opportunity to provide comments today, and thank you for being here.
I don't see Representative Ross. All right. We will go with our next three speakers, who will be Amy Reagan Gallant with the Good Shepherd Food Bank, Stacy Brenner with Broadturn Farm, and Annie Watson with the Maine Dairy Industry Association.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Regan-Gallant. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy at Good Shepherd Food Bank of Maine. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As you and your colleagues continue to work on the Farm Bill, please include robust support for TFAP, SNAP, and child nutrition programs. In Maine, the Emergency Food Assistance Program is administered by DACF. DACF manages the TFAP budget and purchases food from USDA. Good Shepherd Food Bank provides monthly TFAP food distribution to 243 TFAP partners, except for in Cumberland County, where it's managed by Wayside. And I've provided 5 bullet points for you that you can read on your own time for our suggestions to robust TFAP in the Farm Bill. Next is SNAP. The SNAP emergency allotments increased food security and decreased the demand on Emergency Food Network. Since the end of the SNAP emergency allotments, the Emergency Charitable Food Network in Maine has seen a drastic increase in demands. Pantries have empty shelves and are now seeing higher demand than at the height of the pandemic. The Emergency Food Network cannot and should not fill the holes created by inadequate SNAP funding. Likewise, lots of good ideas for SNAP in the Farm Bill. Finally, Maine has the highest rate of childhood food insecurity in New England. And during the school year, Maine students can rely on breakfast and lunch at no charge at school 5 days a week through universal school meals. Woohoo! We know that there is a hunger gap for Maine kids during the summer. The summer food service program only reaches about 27% of the students that rely on school breakfast and lunch. Many Maine communities are no longer eligible to participate in this program due to a drop in free and reduced lunch eligible students completing their paperwork, and likewise a number of fully funding child nutrition programs, including expanding community eligibility, as provided in my testimony. On Saturday morning, I received a phone call from a woman who's lost over $800 a month in SNAP benefits at the end of the emergency allotments. She homesteads, raises animals, gardens, and spends hours every month driving to food pantries to try to close her household's meals gap. The last time she and I met in person, she had no milk in her house for her children. On Saturday, she showed up at one of the pantries she visits, and although they were open, there was no food. Not a box, not a can. She called me and was equal parts panicked and exhausted. She feels like she is failing. The pantry volunteers feel like they are failing. Our drivers delivering the food feel like they are failing. We are not the ones who are failing. The system has failed us. We must have flexible and predictable TFAP, adequately funded SNAP, and accessible child nutrition programs, as well as the charitable food network and nonprofit sector, all working together to find a solution to hunger in Maine. We cannot do this without you. We know this is hard work. My last day of Hill visits this spring was the hardest I've experienced in almost 20 years of doing this work. Chellie, when I got to your office, I cried. Please employ your colleagues to use the Farm Bill to move us closer to a collective solution to hunger in America. Thank you.
Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and esteemed members of the House Agricultural Committee, welcome to Maine. It's a pleasure to have you, and we're so grateful that you've made time for us. My name is Stacy Brenner. I live and farm in Scarborough, Maine, and I represent Senate District 30 in the Maine State Senate, and I work part-time as a senior advisor for land access at Maine Farmland Trust. I'd like to speak to you today wearing all 3 of my hats, but one at a time. So first, with my state Senate hat on, I implore you to create a robust safety net for farmers who find their soils and groundwater contaminated by PFAS. We've been working tirelessly in the state to tackle the PFAS crisis on our farms, and our best success has been achieved by collaboration in state government between the CDC, the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, and the Maine Department of Agriculture. Maine stands ready to support the federal government with our on-the-ground expertise about how best to craft programs that are flexible and meet the nuanced needs of farms. Second, I'd like to request additional funds be dedicated to equitable land access work. As a first-generation farmer and the senior advisor for land access at Maine Farmland Trust, I can speak firsthand about the challenges for new farmers to accomplish the very first difficult piece of the puzzle to get their farm business started, accessing affordable and fertile farmland that will allow for stability, predictability, and overall success. We need to be able to fund new and varied models of farmland access that do not require exorbitant upfront capital. New farmers need to spend their capital on business startup expenses. Let's not make access to farmland a barrier for our next generation of farmers. Finally, I want to speak from my experience as a first-generation farmer and the co-founder and operator of the largest cut flower farm in Maine. Together with my husband and a stellar crew, Broadturn Farm produces over 300 varieties of cut flowers that are in the market from mid-April until Christmas. We've been farming in Maine since 2002, and I'm grateful to be represented by a member of the Cut Flower Caucus. Thank you, Chellie. And as you know, farms run on a very tight profit margin. In order to innovate on our farm, we've often relied on the generosity and investment of federal, state, and nonprofit programs to buffer the risk associated with new endeavors. The one program we believe would really help our growth and innovation is the Value-Added Producers Grant. However, the VABIG has never been available to cut flower farmers. Our biggest profit margins are realized when we create value-added products by selling our flowers in a floral design such as an arrangement for a hotel lobby or a wedding. Marrying the design work with the production capacity of our farm in a farm-driven floral approach is the heart of our farm's focus. In order to continue to innovate and grow the domestic cut flower industry here in the United States, we'd like to strongly encourage you to change this parameter in the Value-Added Producer Grant Program in the next Farm Bill to allow for cut flower farmers to participate more fully in expanding the rural economy. Thank you so much for visiting Maine, and I'm happy to welcome you at Broadturn Farm anytime. Thank you.
Chair Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the House Agricultural Committee, good afternoon. Welcome to Maine, and thank you for holding this listening session about Farm Bill issues of concern for our Maine farmers. I'm Annie Watson. I'm president of the Maine Dairy Industry Association. I own and operate Sheepscot Valley Farm in Whitefield, which is an organic dairy farm that I own and operate with my husband and our 3 small children. MDIA was created by state law to represent the interests of all Maine dairy producers. Our farms provide all the raw milk for Maine's 2 milk bottling plants that supply Maine's beverage milk market and a portion of the Boston market. Dairy is the second leading sector of Maine's diversified agricultural economy, closely behind potatoes. The industry's importance is magnified by the location of dairy farms statewide, and so contributes significantly to our rural infrastructure and economy. MDIA advocates for the producer interest in the development of milk market regulation and policy in the State House, Congress, and in federal market order hearings. MDIA has participated in farm bill development dating back almost 20 years. We are pleased, and we expect you are also, that there is unique consensus about the dairy title for this farm bill. MDIA is here today primarily to echo the unusually unified voice about the absolute need to extend the dairy margin program. Add our voice to the consensus that DMC has been a very effective program. Its importance for our state's dairy industry cannot be overstated. Almost all Maine's dairy farms fall within DMC's Tier 1, and the substantial counter-cyclical payments have largely served to smooth out the chronic roller coaster ride of volatile, inadequate producer pricing. We understand you are considering some minor program changes. Of these, premium reduction for the 950 coverage level would provide the biggest benefit for our small-scale state dairy farm population. These farms have very thin margins at best, and so would benefit from this minor reduction of out-of-pocket cost. We also think reducing the premiums would encourage many of the remaining 25% of our farms to sign up. Finally, we ask the committee to consider improving access to data about the organic dairy industry. 1/3 of MDIA's membership are organic dairy farms, and we believe dairy policy would benefit from having better access to data more similar to what is available for the conventional dairy farming sector. Thank you again for coming to Maine, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Our next three speakers will be Adam Nordell, who is the campaign manager for Defend Our Health, Alex Ingraham, from President of Pingree Associates, and John Piotti, American Farmland Trust.
Good afternoon, Honorable Agriculture Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, and esteemed members of the Agriculture Committee. Thank you so much for being in Maine today, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Adam Nordell. I'm here representing Defend Our Health, as well as Songbird Farm, which I co-own with my wife, Johanna Davis. The winter before last, Johanna and I discovered that our farm had been spread with municipal wastewater sludge about 25 years before we purchased it. Subsequent testing revealed some severe contamination of our soil, our drinking and irrigation water, and many but not all of our crops, with PFAS, per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals. The discovery led to the permanent closure of Songbird Farm, a business that we built from the ground up and which had supported our family for 12 years. Our whole family has been exposed to the chemicals to a degree that surpasses even the highly exposed chemical line workers at DuPont and 3M, where PFAS is manufactured. It will take something like 30 years to get the chemicals out of our bodies. Well, this sounds like the worst possible luck that a farmer could experience. Our timing and our location in Maine have both proved very lucky. Within 6 months of our discovery, the Maine legislature and our governor had created a $60 million safety net to provide short-term income replacement, technical assistance, and infrastructure grants to farms who were forced to temporarily suspend sales and look for a viable path forward. That bill was the model for the bipartisan Relief for Farmers Hit with PFAS Act, which now sits before your committee for possible inclusion in the 2023 Farm Bill. The financial assistance that Maine has offered has been an enormous help for my family. Other impacted farms have been able to safely stay in business by switching crops, installing enormous water filtration systems, or drilling new wells, erecting new greenhouse infrastructures, or using the state's help to replace their income while they depurate their cows and clean up their dairy herds. These farms have not only been able to stay in business, but in some cases grow their sales the very same years they made their discovery. It's incredible. But without that financial and technical support from Maine, many of these farms would likely have gone out of business. This is not just a Maine problem, as we know. I think of impacted farmers Art Scop in New Mexico, Susan Gordon in Colorado, Jason Grostick in Michigan, and the O'Neills in South Carolina. There are something like 20 million acres of cropland estimated to be contaminated with PFAS across the country, and many thousands of farms that are contaminated by PFAS water plumes underneath U.S. military bases. These farms are currently receiving little to no assistance and are forced to choose between quietly living and working on toxic land or losing their livelihood. Let me tell you, that is an irresponsible way to manage our food system. We all have an interest in getting toxic chemicals out of our food. So let's invest in an aid package that centers the science-based solutions that we've identified here in Maine that can keep farmers and consumers safe. Please include the full language of the Relief for Farmers Hit with PFAS Act in the House version of the 2023 Farm Bill. Thank you so much. And I do have written comments as well from one of the impacted farmers who's managed to stay in business, which I can leave at the desk, or if you'd like to hear those as well, I'm available to read those. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today at the Farm Bill listening session. My name is Alex Ingram. I'm a sixth-generation forest landowner in the state of Maine, and I'm here today to talk about natural disasters in our rural communities. Our country continues to face increasing amounts of natural disasters, whether it is wildfires, high winds, flooding, or invasive species. Unfortunately, forest landowners, like many other ag businesses, need our crops for cash flow. This liquidity issue is exacerbated when a natural disaster strikes. However, forest landowners do not have a federal safety net. They do not have crop insurance. They do not have a tax code that enables them to recover and reforest. There is a solution to this problem, and I would ask for House Bill 655, the Disaster Reforestation Act, to be included in the Farm Bill. This bicameral and bipartisan bill would provide landowners with certainty to recover, reforest, and remain the economic engines for our rural communities. Tax policy, although is not commonly in the Farm Bill, it is not necessarily unusual. And there has been specific instances for forestry items to be included in the Farm Bill as tax items. Speaking of rural communities, I would also like to talk about how we support them through the Farm Bill. They are desperate in need of support to ensure a strong rural economy. Representative Duarte and Salinas have introduced the Timber Innovation for Building Rural Communities Act. Please ensure that the programs in this bill are included in the Farm Bill. These policies work together in an interconnected way to advance natural climate solutions and grow rural jobs across the value chain. Encourage the USDA to create a forest and wood product data program that measures and tracks carbon across the supply chain. Establish a wood design education accelerator program for U.S. colleges and universities. Expand the Wood Innovation Grant program to scale the use of mass timber and other wood products. Create rural infrastructure pilot program that utilizes American-grown wood to benefit and underserved communities. Working together, these policies will provide timely and relevant forest and wood carbon data, share critical knowledge, and advance practical climate solutions that also benefit underserved communities. A strong U.S. forestry sector will help rural economies prosper across the country. Forest landowners provide clean air, fresh water, and quality jobs for our nation. Please ensure that they can continue their positive impact by including the Disaster Reforestation Act and Timber Innovation for Building Rural Communities Act in the upcoming Farm Bill. Thank you all for your time today, and happy to answer any questions.
Chairman Thompson, members of the committee, I'm John Piatti, president of American Farmland Trust. But as you know, I live here in Maine, and I've spent most of my career working with Maine farmers. American Farmland Trust priorities for the upcoming Farm Bill have been shared in detail with members of your staff, and for members of the public, you can find our policy stances on the website. So I'm not going to go into detail here, but the summary will not surprise you. We urge you to continue active support for the conservation programs that USDA has been putting forward. They've been so important to our agricultural sector, and they have never been more important than they are now. We also urge you to move forward on innovative programs for farmland access and that support our smaller farms, including the creation of an Office of Small Farms within USDA. One of our priorities this year also has to do with getting the advancement of solar energy in line in a way that it is complementing farming through what we refer to as smart solar principles. And on that issue, I'd urge you to look at the letter to the editor, which was on this issue that was published in yesterday's Washington Post. As a Mainer, I am so appreciative, Chairman Thompson, that you and members of the committee are here. I think we sometimes feel in this state that the broader agricultural world doesn't necessarily think that agriculture here in Maine is important. Your presence means an awful lot, and I know through the tours that you've participated in over the last 2 days, you've gotten a sense of what Maine agriculture is. It's different, perhaps, from other places, but it's doing something very important for our communities, for our livelihoods, and for the environment. Those of us who have been involved with Maine agriculture really see that in some ways we are actually on the cutting edge, and we have important lessons to share with the rest of the country. Your presence here shows that you care about those things. You know, those of us in Maine, we love Chellie Pingree for who she is and what she's done for agriculture both in this state and around the nation. It's great to know there are many others who also care about the future of farming in Maine. Thank you.
Thank you all. Our next three speakers will be Roger Noonan, the president of New England Farmers Union, Sebastian Bell with the Maine Aquaculture Association, and State Senator Henry Ingwerson, the chair of the Senate Ag, Conservation, and Forestry Committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Noonan. I'm the president of the New England Farmers Union and standing too close to the microphone. I'm also from New Hampshire, so thanks for letting me speak in Maine. It's nice to get away from the farm with some good weather. I guess I want to start out first by saying, we've had some extreme weather events recently, like for the last 15, 20 years, but most recently in Vermont. I was trying to Google up how many disaster declarations we've had in New England. They seem to be pretty frequent. So there's a small program, this is pretty nerdy, it's called Agricultural Management Assistance Act. It's pretty much been flat funded since 2012. Very underutilized, small dollar amounts, but it serves three agencies, AMS, NRCS, and RMA. The largest pie goes to the NRCS. But there's if you get down to that pencil dust money, Mr. Chairman, and we're looking, maybe there's a few bucks here or there you can spread around. There's 17 states that have historically low utilization of crop insurance. You're in one of them. Mr. McGovern's in another. New Hampshire, Montana, not Montana, right? Well, Wyoming, New York, not PA. But those states, we don't have, we have a lot of small farmers in New England. The vast majority of farmers across the nation are small farmers. And we just don't have the good risk management tools. That said, we do have whole farm revenue protection, currently at $350. I think the bill just got introduced to increase that in the Senate side to $1 million with the sort of limited reporting, just using your Schedule F. I also want to thank Mr. Costa and Ms. Pingree for the Cows Act, because again, when we're talking small dairies and their ability to do manure management and some innovative stuff, it's not going to be these big digesters. Those work great on some of your big farms in California, right, where they're pumping that biogas out to other facilities, but that's not going to happen in 60 and 100 head operations. So thank you for that. And again, I just want to say, risk management, I heard it before from the blueberry fella, adaptation and resilience. We've got to get through it before we can start turning it back. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I just want to start by saying on the record that John Piatti is a hard act to follow. He said it better than most, which is how important ag is to Maine and how Maine is leading the way. So thank you, John, for doing that. My name is Sebastian Bell. I run the Maine Aquaculture Association, and I happen to be the elected president of the National Association. We've submitted our comments to the committee already. I'm not going to go through those, but I will just say one thing. We would ask that the committee begin to direct USDA to prioritize its work in aquaculture. Aquaculture is the fastest growing food production method in the world, and this country imports over 90% of its seafood that it consumes. Over 60% of that is farmed in other countries. So we as domestic producers, as domestic farmers, are competing against farmers from other countries that don't comply with the kinds of environmental regulations, labor laws, all the things that we have to comply with as domestic growers in this country. And we really would ask USDA to begin to prioritize aquaculture within their programs. We have a number of specific suggestions, but the one I'd like to highlight for the moment, and Congresswoman Pingree will smile when she hears me say this, we have been waiting for over 20 years for the USDA to issue organic standards for aquaculture in this country, and it is way overdue. We are currently competing with organic producers from other countries that can sell their product in this country as organic because they can certify under non-USDA programs. There have been specific regulations and policies that were proposed to USDA through the National Organic Standards Board and through the Aquaculture Organic Standards Task Force, of which I was a member for 15 years. And those regulations have never seen the light of day. That allows farmers in Chile, in China, in India, to certify their products as organic and sell them as organic in the United States of America. And we cannot sell our products as organic because there is no USDA standard for that. So I will end there, and thank you very much for your time, and thank you to Congresswoman Pingree for hosting you to come to Maine, and thank you for your willingness to go around the country and listen to so many farmers and farmer advocates over what the community needs. I think it speaks loud testament to this country and democracy and the farming community that we all represent. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, moderator, could I ask you a question?
Sure.
The point you made on certification for organic, and I think you made it very clearly, but by what standards you would believe that a certification program, if created here in our country by the USDA for aquaculture, do these other importation of fish products from other parts of the world, when they say they're certified as organic, do you believe that that is truly within the criteria that would be acceptable as legitimately being organic, or are they just creating their own or making up their own standards and then saying it's organic?
Great question, and thank you for the question. It varies from country to country. Some countries have quite strict organic standards, but I will say that the organic standards that were proposed they went through the NOSB and were proposed to the National Organic Program were clearly the strictest in the world, and many countries would have had a hard time complying with those standards. They would have had to up their standards in order to comply with the USDA standards. So the USDA standards that were proposed and sat in the National Organic Program in the OMB office for many years were the strictest in the world, and we were quite confident as American farmers that we could achieve those standards. Yes, yeah.
So for all the right reasons, your suggestions makes a lot of sense.
I hope so, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
The short guy. Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the House Ag Committee, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you coming up to Maine and getting to know the agricultural community in the state, which Representative Pingree already does know. And I'm just really honored to be here. My name is Henry Ingwerson. I represent Senate District 32, and for the last year, I've been chair of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee for the Maine Senate. I've been doing a lot of listening over the last year, and I'm hearing some of the concerns of farmers, so it's great to be here today and listen to this further discussion and get to know the Maine farming community. I'm also a sustainable beekeeper, and I can report after the last week or so that I'm surprised to see that the nectar flow is doing pretty good, despite the terrible weather we have. But as beekeepers, our changing climate is making beekeeping so very challenging, and from year to year. I also happen to have 12 grandkids, all in Maine, whose healthy Maine-grown future with Maine-grown foods depends on the work we're all doing here and working on together today in this state. I just want to point out a couple things I noticed in the Farm Bill that I think is important for this state. One is the marker bill, which I hope goes into the Relief for Farmers Hit with PFAS Act. As you know, testing in the state of Maine over the last couple of years has resulted in nearly 60 farms across Maine having unacceptable levels of PFAS in their water and some of the soils and milk. Hundreds of wells throughout the state have also tested above our current levels, which will soon be much too high given the federal levels that are coming up this fall. The state has set aside around $70 million for remediation, alternative business plans for these farms, diversifications, and in some cases, buyout of the entire farm. So my hope is that the Relief for Farmers Hit with PFAS Act will help even more in the next few coming years. The second thing I wanted to mention was the Agricultural Resiliency Act, particularly Title IV, Farmland Preservation and Farm Viability, and within that, the Local Agriculture Marketing Program. We've not only got a PFAS problem in the state, we've lost 25% of our dairy farms due to high cost and labor shortage, and we're also losing these farms due to housing development. So I'm hoping that the local agriculture market program, farmland preservation, and farm viability will help to keep Maine as a diverse and amazing farming state. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Our next three speakers will be Amy Winston, the Senior Director for State Policy with CEI, Chris Fife, Public and Governmental Affairs with Weyerhaeuser, and Walt Whitcomb, a dairy farmer and representative of the Maine dairy industry. While they make their way up to the podium, I just want to say thank you to all our speakers who I think you sense when I'm about ready to interject and you wrap it up. So I really appreciate you catching all of that. So thank you, Amy.
Okay. Hello, Senator Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the House Agriculture Committee. I am Amy Winston. I work with Coastal Enterprises, CEI. We are a nonprofit community development corporation and a community development financial institution. Our mission is to build a just, vibrant, and climate-resilient future for people and communities in Maine and rural regions. We do this by integrating finance, business expertise, and policy solutions to help make the economy work for everyone. CEI has financed food and agriculture businesses since its founding in 1977, and as a financial institution, we've made it our business to understand farm businesses. In the last 5 years, we've invested over $10 million in loans and investments to 87 farm and food-related businesses and leveraged another $37 million, creating and retaining over 600 jobs and helping keep over 8,000 acres in production. Thank you, like everyone else, we appreciate your being here. People find an excuse to come to Maine in the summer, and it's nice to see you come to hear about Maine's diversity of agricultural producers. In listening to John Piatti and Senator Ingerson and Sebastian Bell and others, they have made a lot of the points I would have liked to make. So I really want to echo their points about the practices that we have here in Maine, representing a variety of business models and a wider array of positive best practice techniques, and a farm bill that reinforces these positive practices and helps provide access to USDA programs for smaller and medium-sized family farms to stay in the game, to create markets for them, and to basically to reinforce the work that they're doing and provide access to things like crop insurance, to provide access to payments, things that incentivize the climate-friendly practices that they are doing. So we're a member of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, and for details, I would refer you to their Farm Bill platform. Basically, I'll highlight a few of the pieces that we support because they would make the Farm Bill a system-changing Farm Bill. Again, expand access to crop insurance to serve all types of farmers, promote conservation within crop insurance, provide outreach to those farmers to know about what policies are out there and make them affordable so that the terms are affordable. As a lending institution, we know that without credit and without capital, businesses are not going to exist. So we need to provide access to smaller, socially disadvantaged, new and beginning farmers, capital and credit. Am I right?
Yep, you need to.
I would love to submit my comments. The written comments are a little bit more cogent. A little nervous standing up here, but I would love to submit those and be, of course, receptive to answering any questions about being a CDFI and trying to help support small and medium-sized farms. be viable. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate your saying that.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and distinguished members. Thank you, as others have said, for coming and visiting Maine, listening to our comments. My name is Christopher Fife. I'm the Public Affairs Manager with Weyerhaeuser and a licensed forester living in Winslow, Maine, which is just up the road a little ways. We thank you for this opportunity to provide input to the Farm Bill. There are many exciting prospects for the forest industry in Maine and across the nation. However, one of our biggest challenges in forestry is an available workforce. The forest products industry, including loggers and haulers and mill workers, is one of the largest manufacturing sectors in the U.S., sustaining nearly 940,000 families and contributing $295 billion annually to the U.S. economy. The sustainability and competitive viability of the forest products industry relies on an intact, healthy wood supply chain, including labor. We're very interested in utilizing the Farm Bill to create immersive training hubs for forestry professionals, partnering with industries, colleges, and technical institutes to train people where they live and want to work. An example of the type of program we'd like to see funded is our Northern Maine Community College Mechanized Logging Operations Program. This program is training individuals as qualified logging operators skilled in modern equipment. Regional forestry training hubs would allow people interested in forestry professions to be trained in the region where they plan to work, addressing regional differences in forestry and facilitating connections with local forest employers. The forest products industry struggles to find a trained and skilled workforce at all levels, as an estimated 40 to 60% of young adults are leaving rural forest-based economies for employment opportunities elsewhere. Immersive training hubs for forestry could provide young adults with a path to employment in their forest communities and be a conduit for talent into the forest industry. And I thank you again for the opportunity to provide these comments and would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, Representative McGovern, Representative Beard, and Representative LaCosta, a long way from the heat of the San Joaquin Valley. My name is Walt Whitcomb. With my two daughters, I operate Springdale Farm, a fourth generation small dairy operation in the little town of Waldo, Maine. We milk 115 registered Jersey and Guernsey cattle. They make cheese, artisanal cheese, and we sell beef and dairy products. I was one of the founding members of the Maine Dairy Industry Association, and for many years traveled to Capitol Hill, lobbying unprofessionally around the country for Farm Bill and federal milk marketing order hearings, which you probably don't want to even hear about. I have served in the state legislature and was the Commissioner of Agriculture when it became Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Have served in federal positions. My objective today is to speak specifically in support of what the chairman of the Maine Dairy Industry Association was urging for the continuation of the dairy margin program, as well as considering a reduction in the premiums. I can affirm that this is our key issue in Maine, and one that's unanimous, which is very uncommon in our little state as well as across the country. I have a little bit of history on this issue since our farm had participated in the two previous versions of farmer protection sort of insurance, and none of them worked, or at least worked very well. The other thing that I would just like to raise a little bit to your attention, and it perhaps and hopefully won't be a part of the Farm Bill, is the key issue of clear importance to the Class 1 dairy market, the fluid market, which is this part of the country, is this issue of the higher of component in federal order hearing discussion. This change, seemingly slight, cost dairy farmers $1 million after it was implemented. And I know there's a constant pressure between processors and dairy farmers. You folks have spent a lot of time studying issues, and again, I want to focus that the dairy margin coverage is where we settle as a program that works. There's never enough, but dairy farmers do appreciate that effort. Off my prepared script is a discussion a little bit about crop insurance. I spent a couple of years in farm programs for USDA, serving in a regional capacity. We work to bring crop insurance people to the Northeast. The whole region is underserved. We have high-value specialty crops. We actually had some of the national leadership on some of the oyster farms here in Maine. They struggle to cover our regional crops. It's not like corn and soybeans. It's not automatic. I would urge you to pay attention to that. One of the issues is that the region is served out of Raleigh, North Carolina. No offense to those folks, but it's very difficult to get attention in all of the Northeast, maybe with the exclusion of Pennsylvania and Maryland, but anywhere north of there, high-value crops like Maine blueberries and others really can't find a space that crop insurance addresses. So I'm glad that's been brought up by several speakers, and I can see the time is up.
Excuse me, I just want to comment. I could not agree with you more. One size does not fit all, and crop insurance for American agriculture ought to be applicable and at least an attempt to provide for specialty crops around the country. And I think that's something that we really need to look at. And thank you for underlining and making that point again.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for catching what that look was, Mr. Whitcomb. That was awesome. Our next three speakers will be Shannon Weber, the Northern Region Credit Lender for Farm Credit East, Colleen Ann Kisselberg from Arthur Carroll Crop Insurance, and Emily Coffin from the Maine Coast Fishermen's.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Weber. I'm the Northern Region Credit Leader for Farm Credit East, which is part of the National Farm Credit System. Farm Credit East is a cooperative providing credit and financial services to our 18,000 customer owners in New York, New Jersey, and all of New England. Our crop insurance arm, Crop Growers, provides risk management solutions throughout the region. With offices in Auburn and Presque Isle, Farm Credit East has 931 members in Maine, including more than 300 in the 1st District. As a lender, Farm Credit is dedicated to 3 main industries: agriculture, forest products, and fishing, and we're proud to have a strong presence in all of them here in Maine. There's a lot to unpack in a farm bill, so let me focus on 2 of Farm Credit's policy priorities. Part of providing stability and certainty is continued support for programs that assist farms' conservation efforts. Farm Credit is part of the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance. Our members can be a key part of combating climate change and have a great story to tell. Another component of providing stability and certainty are safety net programs and risk management tools like crop insurance, including policies for specialty crops. Maintaining a strong, effective, and flexible crop insurance program should be a top priority. Farm Credit is also working on several proposals to enhance our ability to invest in the rural communities our members and our employee teams call home. These proposals include allowing Farm Credit to partner with other lenders to support critical community facilities, provide additional risk capital to rural businesses, and expand lending for rural housing. We also support enhancing Farm Credit's ability to provide capital to the fishing industry. And Congresswoman Pingree, I want to thank you for introducing H.R. 4940, the Fishing Industry Credit Enhancement Act, and I hope it can be included in the Farm Bill. In closing, the Farm Bill is a great opportunity to focus on the needs of rural communities and agriculture, but it also underscores the link between farmers and consumers through the nutrition programs that are such an important part of the bill. Farm Credit East is proud to support those efforts, including $100,000 in farmers markets grants that we recently awarded. Many of those markets are using grants to extend SNAP benefits and improve healthy food access in underserved communities. Mr. Chairman, we applaud your efforts to hear perspectives from across the country, and we look forward to working with you and dedicated members like Congresswoman Pingree to help pass another strong farm bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Congresswoman Pingree, for allowing us to speak today. Hello, my name is Colleen Kisselberg. I am part owner and crop insurance agent from the Arthur Carroll Crop Insurance Agency. Northeast growers face unique challenges working outside big commodity markets. Our farmers depend on crop insurance in loss years. There are no big lobbying groups here. Growers are depending on USDA's risk management agency for policies that will work for us, but this region is underserved, as you've heard. First, RMA has not put enough effort into Northeast policy development. Crop insurance is complicated, and to create good products, RMA needs good information. Listening sessions and third-party contractors are no substitute for direct engagement with farmers and grower groups. The current proposed changes to the apple policy are a good example of this. Poor outreach has led RMA to propose changes which will severely impact our apple growers' use of the policy here in Maine. Growers here must salvage any apples they can in a loss year like this year to maintain their markets. The proposed policy changes will seriously cut loss coverage for these growers, and Maine apple growers will lose an important part of their risk protection due to RMA's lack of understanding of our region. We will lose orchards. Please urge RMA to drop the proposed apple policy changes. Second, in the Northeast, direct market and specialty crops wholesale is the dominant method of marketing for agricultural produce. Here, the local prices are not affected by daily market swings like commodity crops are, and our growers' first concern is the risk of producing a good crop. We need actual production history policies in the Northeast, but RMA has been developing revenue and area-based policies, ignoring the importance of production policies in the specialty crop regions like ours. In conclusion, the USDA's Risk Management Agency's product oversight and development is leading to the degradation of crop insurance in the Northeast. Policies are overly complex and do not fit the needs of our region, and that's why they fail. We urge you to add to the Farm Bill language, which will bring real crop insurance development back to the Northeast. Thank you. I would like to answer any questions after or whatever that you have on crop insurance. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, and members of the committee for the chance to speak to the Farm Bill today. I also want to thank the other speakers for sharing their concerns. You can really tell we're in a food system. My name is Emily Coffin. I'm with the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. We are an industry-founded nonprofit supporting community-based commercial fishermen. I'm a commercial fisherman. My dad is a lobsterman. His name is Jim. He's out on the boat right now. And as a food producer and someone who cares about food producers, I'm looking for your support. MCFA believes that domestic wild-caught seafood from small-scale producers should be more fully integrated into the U.S. food system for the sake of food security, climate resilience, and small business survival. Here's how you can help. The Fishing Industry Credit Enhancement Act would provide fishermen with access to farm credit programs. Young fishermen like me need low-cost capital now more than ever, as financial barriers to entry keep rising. I'm 23. To me, it's not financially advantageous to be on a lobster boat right now full-time. Instead, I got a policy job, and I'm talking on this microphone. But I want fishing to be a path for others. Second, we ask that you include provisions of the Domestic Seafood Production Act that revitalize working waterfronts by improving domestic seafood processing capacity for small boat and independent fishermen. I want to thank Congresswoman Pingree for your support of increased working waterfront funding and new programs to prevent gentrification, enhance climate resilience, and expand opportunities for community-based seafood businesses. Third, Congress can use the Farm Bill to mandate that USDA spread Section 32 procurement beyond the largest players and to smaller processors like those in Maine. This would bring capital and equity to smaller-scale fishing communities in Maine and keep Section 32 dollars in communities. MCFA has shared proposed Farm Bill language with your staff, Congresswoman Pingree, to clarify that local agriculture marketing program, or LAMP grants, should be accessible to U.S. commercial fishing and seafood businesses. Unfortunately, the USDA has kept fisheries out of LAMP grants, and in many instances, despite the law clearly allowing us to participate. Let's make these programs accessible by default. Thank you so much for your consideration of these suggestions. Improving access, infrastructure, and markets for fishermen and seafood businesses is a true win-win for the nation. I hope that while you're in Maine, you get to enjoy the delicious seafood that we Mainers are so proud of. Thanks.
Our next three speakers will be Jenny Tilton Flood from Flood Brothers LLC Dairy Farm, Camille Suter, Product Manager for Johnny Selected Seeds, and Denny Denham from Ducks Unlimited.
For the moderator and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank everybody. I have a plane to catch, and I get the prize for the furthest distance. But I just want to thank Chairman Thompson for the incredible efforts and bipartisan work you're doing and holding these listening sessions throughout the country. Not all of his members can make it to each of the hearing sessions. He's been to every one, and we thank them. You've been out to California, and my colleagues, Mr. Baird and Mr. McGovern, who do such a good job on the committee. I just want you folks here to know in Maine, your representative, Chellie Pingree, does an outstanding job. She's well respected among the committee, and she's looked to for advice and comments. And the 2 days that she hosted us here were really off the charts. It was incredible, Chellie, and we really appreciate it. I thank you. I learned a great deal about Maine agriculture. And I thank my colleagues. We're going to produce a bipartisan farm bill because of Chairman Thompson and all of us working together. Thank you so very much.
Let me just quickly thank you, Mr. Costa, for coming all the way from California for the work you're doing as a ranking member on one of our subcommittees. And I know I get a lot of praise for showing people 2 wonderful days in Maine and introducing them some of the challenges that we're all dealing with and nagging them to come here for our listening session. But the truth is, when you get to show off Maine, it's a pretty darn easy thing to do. So thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Tilton Flood, and I am proud to be from and welcome you to this great state of Maine, about 72 miles northeast of here in Clinton on unceded Wabanaki land. 3 generations of my 21-member family own and operate Flood Brothers LLC. We are a dairy farm that, as a member owner of the Agrimark Cabot Creamery Cooperative, produces 17,000 gallons of fresh, local quality milk for our neighbors' tables every single day. We steward thousands of acres of land, employ 31 full-time employees alongside 7 full-time family members to care for our farm and herd of 3,400 cows. What we do every day is drive our economy and nourish our community. We are lucky enough to make our living through our way of life, all the while being productive and integral contributors and drivers of our food systems, communities, and economies. We need programs that empower and embolden our important contributions despite our differences of size, system, and story for all of our farmers. Programs and policies that make a difference for dairy farmers and eaters in Maine include maintaining the DMC program with updates, increasing DMC Tier 1 production limit to a 6 million pound cap, maintaining the historic partnerships between ag and nutrition needs, recognizing nutrition is a rural and urban challenge, increasing funding to EQIP to support ongoing sustainability efforts, voluntary and incentive-based grant programs to support adoption of climate-smart practices, ensuring the staff and technical expertise is available and well-supported, recognition of dairy as a sustainable feed source, programs supporting and rectifying past limitations for socially disadvantaged farmers. And while not part of the Farm Bill, the fact is that our food system is not sustainable without a supported and secure workforce. The President has the tools at his disposal to extend workforce authorization and parole visa to those entering the country and to those here in this country who are longtime taxpayers and ag and food system workers, all of whom are so crucial to our farms, food systems, and workforce. Programs and policies support and empower a local and regional food system through a diversity of farmers and producers, help my state feed itself, protect its resources, nourish communities from the inside out, secure our nation and solve the problems of climate crisis, mitigate climate challenges, and protect and safeguard future generations. Thank you so very much for your time and your ongoing efforts to support our food systems and farmers like me. And if you want to talk about what we can do with manure to make this world an even better place, I'm your gal. Thank you.
I think we had Camille Suter. If not, then Denny.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, and colleagues. On behalf of Ducks Unlimited, I want to thank each of you for leading and serving the House Agricultural Committee. And I also want to thank you for organizing today's listening session here in Freeport, Maine. My name is Denny Denham. I'm from Gray, Maine, and I'm a volunteer for Ducks Unlimited, past state chairman and currently campaign chairman. DU is the largest waterfowl conservation organization in the world with over 1 million supporters. I represent more than 2,000 dedicated members across the great state of Maine. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of Maine Ducks Unlimited. We are proud of DU's long history partnering with farmers and ranchers to deliver voluntary conservation. And we look forward to continuing our work with you to sustain our country's natural resources. The conservation programs included in the Farm Bill are a key part of the safety net used by farmers and ranchers to maximize on-farm efficiency and productivity to maintain soil health, water quality, and wildlife habitat on their lands. Conservation is in high demand across the country, and particularly how DU and our friends in agriculture practice it. That is voluntary, incentive-based. We and our partners respectfully ask that you and your colleagues strengthen support for the most efficient and important conservation programs in the Farm Bill. We hope to see strong wetland and grassland protections continued in the 2023 Farm Bill, which support our waterfowl populations. We support strong funding for important voluntary working lands programs like the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and the Conservation Stewardship Program. We support a robust agricultural conservation easement program. This is a nationally popular program where demand far exceeds available funds. We support an improved conservation reserve program through expanded, locally led efforts that improve wildlife habitat. Ducks Unlimited looks forward to working with all of you and in writing the 2023 Farm Bill that sustains our natural resources. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you. And our next three speakers will be Jason House, the president of NGWA, Amos Eno, Land Conservation Association, and Marge Kilkelly from Dragonfly Cove Farm.
Thank you. My name is Jason House. I'm a senior hydrogeologist at Woodard & Curran and the current president of the National Groundwater Association. National Groundwater Association is the largest nonprofit organization representing water well contractors, groundwater scientists, and engineers, and groundwater advocates for the nation. I'm here today to speak in favor of inclusion of the Healthy H2O Act in the 2023 Farm Bill. Private water wells provide water for more than 30 million Americans. Most of those Americans live in rural areas and small towns. Many of these folks struggle daily to be able to afford to test their water wells for contaminants, and there's very little in the way of support for these families at the state and federal levels. And you can't really produce food for the nation when you're worried about the health and safety of your family because of the potential threats coming from their groundwater. Private water wells are a crucial part of American water infrastructure, and when properly tested and maintained, provide clean and safe water. The Healthy H2O Act would provide basic grants through the Department of Agriculture for those in need to have their water wells tested for contaminants, and if contaminated, purchase basic water treatment technology if needed. The bill is a cost-effective way towards solving a problem that is very real and happening all over the country, whether that is threats from contaminants like PFAS that we've already heard about several times today and you hear about daily in the news that are ubiquitous across the country, to naturally occurring contamination like arsenic, which we have quite frequently here in Maine. So too often in the large infrastructure and spending bills that are passed out of Washington, private water well owners are not even considered, or they're very low down on the totem pole in terms of being able to be included in that. Even though millions of those families in this country that we are dependent upon for food depend on their water well every year. There's an intimate connection between groundwater and agriculture, whether you're in northern Maine, in the county, where you're raising potatoes and irrigating from those, or in eastern Maine, irrigating your blueberry crops and relying on that water for your drinking water as well, or as far out as California and the Central Valley or San Joaquin Valley, where you're relying on those for irrigation and water supply. By including the Healthy H2O Act in the Farm Bill, you can start a course correction toward helping those families access clean and safe water. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in front of you today, and if you have any questions, I'll be available. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Pingree, I'm Amos Eno of Land Conservation Assistance Network. Did you know the largest conservation information platform on the internet in the United States, serving farmers, ranchers, and forest owners, was built here in Freeport, Maine? The Land Conservation Assistance Network has been online since 2003. We're a one-stop shop designed to help landowners solve day-to-day and legacy problems. We do not do any environmental advocacy. We're a conservation information clearinghouse designed to help landowners find conservation solutions and improve their bottom line. LandCan's a national program which today is over 220,000 pages, 74,000 listings. Underneath that, we've built 11 state-specific LandCans designed down to the county level for Maine, California, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Idaho, Colorado, Texas, Georgia, Virginia, and Alabama, and also Habitat Can for endangered species recovery. We're currently averaging over 2,000 users a day, 70,000 users a month. In Maine, we have 1,500 users a month for a state of only 6,000 farms. So far in 2023, we have over 450,000 users. We host all USDA programs that touch America's 13 million landowners, NRCS, FSA, and the Forest Service. We host the comparable programs for all 50 states. In the nonprofit sector, we host every soil and water conservation district, over 3,000, every land trust, over 1,400, and over 45,000 for-profit businesses serving rural America, including over 5,000 tax and estate lawyers and 6,000 consulting foresters. Every carbon conservation provider, veterinarians, thousands more. LandCan is free, there's no login. For the last 12 or 14 years, we've had no financial support from USDA. NRCS did not allow federal funds to list technical service providers. Try doing a conservation easement without a technical service provider. They also don't provide federal funding for updating listings. We do 25,000 updates a year. We encourage you to consider adding a provision to the Farm Bill to support LandCan, our listing of technical service providers, and to expand our state-level coverage. For a very modest investment, you will help sustain and improve landowners a friendly tool that leverage on-the-ground conservation results. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members and staff of the House Agriculture Committee for this opportunity to offer ideas and insights for the 2023 Farm Bill. My name is Marge Kilkelly. I'm a farmer, rural advocate, consummate policy wonk, and former member of the Maine legislature, where I served as chair of the Agriculture Committee at various times. During the previous two farm bills, I served as senior policy advisor to Senator King with a focus on agriculture. My husband and I own and operate a small conventional livestock farm, primarily producing cashmere goats for meat and fiber in Dresden, just down the road from where you were this morning. My comments cover 3 integrated issues: rural development, livestock for local markets, and public education. I appreciate the effort that goes into each and every farm bill, and I strongly support all types of agriculture, from very large-scale production to small-scale homestead production, conventional, organic, hydroponic, or whatever. I believe that each producer looks at their situation and the ability to determine what's right for them and their customers. Therefore, I firmly believe the Farm Bill must offer support and assistance to all agriculture. As we sit here in Maine, the largest state in New England, we must also appreciate that all of New England is smaller than 16 other U.S. states. But by population, we're actually larger than Illinois. New England has a history of small-scale agriculture production focused on local markets since the Boston market began in 1634. Sadly, farm bills have historically developed and attempted to overlay programs and support designed on other regions, and we've had varying results of that. Often the successes were because we are actually quite creative. I believe that there are ways to build on previous farm bill successes and support our agriculture. One would be to pilot a New England regional cooperative agricultural program. While we all fiercely are protective of our own states, the small size of New England states can sometimes create unintended barriers to production, sales, processing, and conservation. With the agreement of each state, of course, a 5 or 10-year pilot project could identify programs that would benefit from the aggregation of those states. For example, simplified process for interstate sale of state-inspected meat within the region, or allowing states to swap or share NRCS regional equity payments that they can't use. Lack of poultry processing capacity is a critical barrier for producers and consumers in Maine. We stopped raising ducks because of a processing shortage. Under current law, we could operate an exempt poultry facility, but the finances don't work unless we were to raise many more chickens than our land can support. However, if we and others could build an exempt 1 to 5,000 bird facility and rent it to other poultry producers, that would be financially feasible and scale appropriate. That would increase production capacity, create new business or cooperative models, reduce climate impact by reducing travel time to processing, and maximize the impact of USDA funding. True rural development. Research for equipment and technology to support small farms and producers. We're small. We have 40 to 60 goats, several pigs, 100 or so poultry on average. Our farm is scaled to our land, but we work to maximize production and reduce cost at every turn. When we decided to buy feed in bulk and mix grind it ourselves, we were told we weren't big enough, so we did it ourselves. And today, after paying off the infrastructure in 2 years, our grain costs are 50% less than a store-bought 50-pound bag. We switched to 4x4 round bales and reduced our costs by a third. Those developments, those innovations and developments are important to us so that we can afford to continue to provide food and fiber for our customers. Research to increase the availability of local foods must include equipment and technology scaled to all sizes of agriculture. The last thing I want to talk about is agritourism. I think the silent E in agritourism is education, and it needs to be a priority. I have submitted my full remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next 3 speakers will be Seth Crowick from Crystal Springs Farm, Suzanne Lee from the University of Maine Mitchell Center, and Nancy Smith from Grow Smart, Maine.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, and esteemed members of the committee, and much appreciated staff. My name's Seth Crowick. I run Crystal Spring Farm in Brunswick, a little less than 10 miles from here, and I've been doing that for the last 20 years. I currently manage about 187 certified organic acres. I'd like to ask that the Farm Bill make available significant increases in funding for research and supports to small and medium farms trying to adapt to climate change. As an organic grower, I'm bound to minimize the environmental impact of growing food while finding ways to increase biodiversity and protect the long-term health of my soils. Small and medium-sized farms in Maine make big impacts in their community's resiliency, and the Farm Bill needs to recognize this in both spirit and funding. A significant crop on my farm is the Maine wild blueberry. This crop is unique to Maine, and it's been in commercial production since the days of the Civil War. Drought and frost losses have dramatically increased in recent years as we learn how to manage blueberries in a more variable climate. In 2019, I enrolled my blueberry acreage in USDA specialty crop insurance. 2019 was a significant drought year, and a wildly late frost in 2020 wiped out that year's production completely. Both crop years were insured for just 60% of their average value, and claims were paid, allowing us to stay in business and continuing managing our fields. In 2021, my policy was canceled by the USDA Risk Management Association because, quote, risks are determined to be excessive, unquote. I appealed this decision with RMA in North Carolina to no avail. I know from colleague commodity farmers in other states that they have made crop loss claims year after year for decades without fear of cancellation. I would ask that small and specialty crop farmers, as most of us are here in Maine, be offered that same production as our Midwestern friends. As we move forward into an unknown climate, we need ironclad systems to protect farmers who risk their livelihoods every day to provide food for their communities. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak and hope the rest of your trip goes well.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Congresswoman Pingree, and members of the House Agriculture Committee. And thank you for holding this listening session for the Farm Bill. My name is Suzanne Lee, and I'm a faculty fellow at the University of Maine. After 30 years in the consumer products and food industry, I currently lead a research team working with the state to develop solutions for Maine food waste, that nearly 40% of food that we produce but never eat. I'd like to also thank Congresswoman Pingree for her leadership on this same issue. Today, I'm here to ask that the Farm Bill consider food waste solutions as one of the single best investments for Mainers and all Americans, feeding people and the soil while saving money, farm resources, and mitigating climate change. Why invest in food waste? Well, food waste is just a symptom of a broken food system, which hurts everyone. Our farms actually produce enough food to feed our people, but like a broken plumbing system leaking water, our U.S. food system leaks 119 million pounds of food annually, while 34 million Americans are food insecure. If we try to quickly address this hunger crisis by just putting more food into our broken system without fixing the underlying leaks, it only leads to more wasted food and farm resources. So what can be done? Well, here in Maine, we work closely with our farmers, food processors, grocers, restaurants, food pantries, schools, and consumers to identify food waste solutions that fix the leaks and restore the connections needed to direct edible food to feed more people, inedible food to be composted and returned to the farms, while saving money, reducing greenhouse gases, all through reducing food waste. Some examples: we've developed a circular food system model here that connects farms, distributors, pantries, and composters and circle that material back to the farms to ensure that food flows with no waste. We've built awareness of the food date label issue to prevent good edible food from being discarded needlessly. We promoted a state food-wide rescue software system connecting local food donors with local feeding sites and volunteers. We use student-directed food waste interventions like share baskets, allowing students to donate unwanted students to students who have a need. This work has been very popular, drawing a broad spectrum of partners and generating favorable TV, radio, and newspaper coverage, building further widespread support. I want to thank you for coming here to Maine to have this listening session, and I hope that the Farm Bill will consider investing in food waste solutions to fix our food system and benefit all Americans. Thank you very much. It's Maine. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you to Congresswoman Pingree for this opportunity to speak with Chairman Thompson and esteemed members of this committee. My name is Nancy Smith, CEO of Grow Smart Maine. While most here are focusing their remarks on the critical USDA roles in farmland protection, farm viability, and nutrition, I will begin by saying that we fully support these priorities. In our role as the USDA designated State Rural Development Council, I will focus my remarks on the rural development title in the Farm Bill. Grow Smart Maine is a statewide nonprofit founded in 2004. I've been leading the organization since 2010, and in that role, I bring 17 years of experience as a farmer, 15 years as a forester, and 8 as a state legislator. Harold Bredesen, who works with me, has been a small-scale farmer since 2018 and has more than 15 years of community development experience locally and internationally. Our work includes affordable housing, community and economic development, broadband, farmland protection, and most importantly, we frame strategies around the interconnectedness of these vital attributes of sustainable rural communities. Programs with USDA Rural Development support this work towards our mutual goals. I have 2 urgent requests to this committee as you shape the next Farm Bill. First is to reauthorize the National Rural Development Partnership and the State Rural Development Councils. This designation is vital to our ability to convene and engage federal and state agencies, as well as our many business, individual, and nonprofit partners in successfully supporting rural communities. Second is to continue to robustly fund the USDA Rural Development and its programs as the vital component of the mission of USDA. Rural communities across America need these resources to not just survive, but to thrive for decades to come. It's been truly an honor to speak with you all today. I'll follow up with printed materials that support and supplement my remarks, and I want to thank you too for coming to Maine to hear from farmers and those of us that support them and the rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next 3 speakers, and by the way, we are at number 31, so we've had 30 speakers so far. Thank you all again for abiding by that time frame. Our next 3 speakers will be Melanie Sachs, who's a state representative, House District 102, James Hanna, Executive Director of Columbia County Food Security, and Sally Clucci, who is also a representative in the Maine State Legislature.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the committee. Welcome to Freeport. My name is Melanie Sachs, and I represent House District 102 in this amazing community of Freeport. Thank you for being here. I've done more school plays on that stage than you can imagine. Y'all look good up there. Y'all good. I'm so honored to represent this community, and I want to thank you very much for visiting, for example, Wolf's Neck Center this morning, which is one of the shining examples of the investment that you all have made through the Farm Bill. I also want to note that Maine Beer Company on Route 1, using a rural development grant for their solar installations, were also a recipient. So you may want to add that to the tour, Representative Pingree. Yeah, just so you know. So food farming and nutrition and assistance is in my role as the House Chair of Appropriations, which I'm very honored to do in the Maine State Legislature. Our budget reflects our values in the investment and the importance that we see on rural development, farming, and agriculture here in the state of Maine. For example, you've heard the amazing work of PFAS. We've done healthy soils. We've done drought mitigation, actually put in some processing to develop processors here in Maine in the last budget as well. Pandemic relief for dairy farmers was just an integral part of our budget that we just passed as well. And I encourage you to continue to these pieces in this federal farm bill. But I'm here because SNAP saves lives. SNAP saves lives. The work that happened with the increase in emergency allotment during the pandemic saved lives. It moved the needle to decrease poverty in Maine by 13.5%, which is a huge game changer for people here in Maine. Again, our budget this past session and in last session tried to move that needle as well. As they said, universal breakfast and lunch for every single Maine child. In part, federal funding, also significant state funding for that initiative.
I want to say that we've done things like Meals on Wheels, enhanced Meals on Wheels. The federal government gave us pandemic relief funds for Meals on Wheels. The state budget just filled that hole that's being left because those federal funds are going away. These are saving people's lives. The impact of the emergency allotment being decreased in SNAP is a total, in one estimate by my good friend from Good Shepherd during their testimony in front of the legislature, said that $17 million a month to our local grocers is being felt. That impact is being felt because of the loss of those dollars for people investing in their local, such as our beautiful Bow Street Market right down the street. They're losing that revenue because people don't have that revenue to feed themselves and their families. SNAP saves lives. You can save lives by adding that emergency allotment back to SNAP, where, as they talked about, the senior who had $100 is down to $19 a month in additional food supplements. We don't have the resources to replace that. The state of Maine has its own SNAP program that tries to help people who don't qualify for federal SNAP. We can't do this alone. We need your help. SNAP saves lives. Thank you for those investments. Thank you for considering that increased emergency allotment on a permanent basis for Maine seniors, families, and children. Thank you for being here as well. Thanks.
Well, that was an important message. Thank you, Representative. And thank you for hosting us in Freeport. Well, thank you, Honorable Chair Thompson and other members of the House Ag Committee. Thank you for traveling to Maine. We especially are grateful to Representative Pingree for arranging this opportunity for you to hear about Farm Bill issues that matter to us. Along with Chellie and my colleagues working here are developing some of the most innovative strategies to address food system issues in the nation. My name's Jim Hanna, another old guy named Jim. As Executive Director of the Cumberland County Food Security Council, I represent a diverse food system coalition. We hear a lot of talk in food system circles lately about food as medicine. Additionally, it's important to acknowledge when food is poison. In the commodities title, we are providing a lot of subsidies to large corporations who profit from farmers overproducing ingredients that are made into products that undermine public health. We know we need to hold the manufacturers of these products accountable. Minimally, USDA needs to stop subsidizing them. The companies that benefit from distributing ultra-processed foods need to be assessed additional taxes to compensate for the negative health outcomes resulting from people consuming what they make. Those proceeds can be invested in more sustainable food systems and communities impacted by their harmful practices. Standing up to the businesses profiting from making Americans sick is one of the most powerful changes USDA and Congress can make to the Farm Bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here, Chairman Thompson and Congresswoman Pingree and the Committee on Agriculture. I'm Sally Clucci. I am the House Representative for District 52 in the state of Maine, which includes the communities of Bowdoin, Bodenham, and Richmond. And Apple Creek Farm, where you were this morning, is in my district. I am also the chair of the Bodenham Food Pantry, and so some of my comments are going to be coming from that perspective. So when the pandemic hit, we had significant supply chain issues with food. One of the things we noticed is that there was no shortage of local produce that we were able to hand out at the pantry, lots of it. But what we did have was a significant lack of access to meat. I think one of the key reasons for this is that it's complicated and really expensive to grow and slaughter and produce meat. We need to see technical investments coming to Maine to support our meat and poultry farms so that we can raise and slaughter meat right here in our state. We also need ongoing subsidies from the federal government so that we can sell it at competitive prices. Shifting some of those big commercial subsidies to states in the Midwest and to major corporations to small and mid-sized businesses in Maine will really help make a difference in our communities. I also want to highlight that in this state and across the country, there is a lack of culturally appropriate access to meat. Specifically, in our communities in Maine, we have a lot of new Mainers that are looking for halal meat, which is really hard to come by. Most of the halal meat in this country it's imported from, I think, Australia. Maybe there's some in the Midwest, but in the Northeast, there's very little of it. I do think that shifting those investments in commercial farms to small and mid-sized businesses will help to address this. My second point is that SNAP funding really should be allowed for people to purchase prepared foods. When you're living in a tent or a car, you don't have access to make a meal from scratch, and that's an easy change that can help make a lot of people's lives better. One last point. We need to have fair wages for farm workers. The federal minimum wage is not a livable wage. It's disgraceful. We can and we must do better. And ending on just a slightly happier note, but I want you all to take, maybe this isn't happy, but I need you all to take notes on this one. So you need to tell whoever's purchasing food for TFAP to stop purchasing vegetarian vegetable soup. Nobody likes it. Nobody eats it. It goes out, it comes back. It goes out, it comes back. We do this back and forth until it's time to go to the pigs. So thank you.
Thank you. And our next three speakers will be Dana Edness. I apologize for my mispronunciations of any names. The Senior Anti-Hunger Policy Advisor for GoPIF, Scott Carter from Conduit Government Relations, and Dave Colson from New Leaf Farm.
Congresswoman Pingree, Chairman Thompson, members of the House Agriculture Committee, state colleagues, and dear people, good afternoon. I'm Dana Eidsness, Senior Anti-Hunger Policy Advisor in the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future, and I'm responsible for the implementation of Maine's roadmap to end hunger by 2030. Maine DACF developed this comprehensive roadmap and cross-cutting strategies because food insecurity is a crisis in Maine, impacting 11.4% of households in the state and over 153,000 people per year. 1 in 5 children in Maine live in food insecure households. I have 3 main points and 2 asks to share today. 1, food insecurity is increasing in Maine. Housing costs, rising food and fuel prices are making it harder and harder for people to feed themselves and their families, and wages are not keeping up with these increases. The end of pandemic-era supports have put additional pressure on Mainers and their families and have increased demand at food pantries across the state, where we are receiving alarming ongoing reports of shelves being empty. 2, we know that SNAP is one of the only proven effective programs we have in this country to combat hunger. SNAP expansion during the pandemic and prepaying the child tax credit and making it refundable kept millions of Americans and thousands of Mainers from going without and cut child poverty in the US in half in only 6 months. We know what works. 3, SNAP benefits are too low to meet the nutritional needs of most individuals and families, and we cannot afford any additional cuts to SNAP or further restrictions on participation. The average modestly priced meal in Cumberland County, where we are now, costs $3.53. That's 29% more than the maximum SNAP benefit per meal. The percentage of SNAP participants who are working poor in Maine is 78%. At the very least, SNAP benefits must be preserved at the revised Thrifty Food Plan level, and we need to remove barriers to participation. We know that work requirements hurt Maine people, taking away vital food assistance. Research has proven that work requirements did not increase employment. Time limits on benefits hurt Maine people. The terrible phenomenon of struggling with food insecurity yet being ineligible for anti-hunger programs hurts Maine people, and the way that poverty is defined and calculated is ill-suited for capturing the economic realities and living costs in Maine. So on behalf of Maine's Ending Hunger by 2030 initiative, we ask that SNAP be protected
expanded, and that barriers to participation be removed. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'll submit more comprehensive remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Mr. McGovern, Ms. Pingree, Mr. Baird. My name is Scott Carter, and I am President and Chief Strategy Officer of Conduit Government Relations. I represent many organizations that have interest in agriculture. However, today I will be speaking on my own behalf. My past history before I came to Maine and started my consulting firm, I was head of Chief of USDA's Food Nutrition Service Office of Governmental Affairs. I've worked from 2019 to 2021. I was F&S Disaster Response Coordinator. I've worked with 3 administrations, 3 farm bills, to include 19 hearings on SNAP during the 2018 Farm Bill. Oversaw the F&S Congressional Correspondent Office that received every single congressional inquiry for 14 years and was the main point of contact on all 15 nutrition programs at USDA. So I say that to say I've heard just about everything on SNAP, bad, good, all the myths and everything else, and I'm here to tell you that SNAP works and myths do not. This all culminated years ago. You all may remember the National Journal in 2013 had this picture, Return of the Welfare Queen. Of course, this is myths. This doesn't work. This is constantly put up. Jerry, I know this is your magazine, but it was on there. So what I'd like to say is that SNAP works. However, as we recently seen in an Anti-Deficit Act, we fortunately were able to expand access to SNAP by our most vulnerable population, specifically our veterans, our homeless, seniors, foster children, and unfortunately, mostly in neighborhoods, rural areas where we have massive technology challenges, transportation challenges, and access to food. So a few ideas I would throw out. SNAP outreach and education. States currently are not mandated to produce outreach plans to educate people on SNAP. That needs to be changed where they absolutely are mandated to do it. In addition, they need to publish and reach out specifically to our vulnerable populations. It can be done. Current review of all the state plans. Unfortunately, most don't have state plans, and I was unable to find anything related to a veteran or homeless on any SNAP outreach plans. Secondly, SNAP education. SNAP Ed is a $501 million program that states are provided formula grants. However, most states do not do a great job of ensuring that there's a diversity of recipients who receive those funds. Once again, how about we turn around and use 10% of the SNAP allotments to reach vulnerable populations like veterans, homeless, seniors, and rural areas, as I've mentioned. Doesn't cost any more, simply takes SNAP Ed and moves it to where it's supposed to be, which will again get to the issue, Mr. Chairman, of SNAP choice and nutrition. Let's educate people by incentives and education versus SNAP choice taking away their restrictions. We don't tell farmers what to use for their subsidies. We don't tell students what to use for their Pell Grants. So why are we telling people on SNAP what to buy? Doesn't make any sense. Finally, I'd also like to go ahead and talk about, we've heard a lot about small farmers, specialty crops and others. What I find is that there is no data or information available. We mandate that our local schools and others buy American. However, a recent GAO report says 94% of the fruits purchased are exempt and waivered. 52% of the vegetables are waivered. We're mandating that our schools buy America, but they have no tools to identify those products, identify those markets available. There could be blueberries in Maine available, but a school in Iowa, Mr. Baird, may not know about it. We got blueberries for you. Let's provide those farmers and those schools and others with the tools to understand where the markets are, so how we can do that. So I would say that as well.
And Mr. Carter, I may ask you to
I'm going to finish up right here with my final thing. I would ask you to remember a few things as you consider the Farm Bill. I've never met anybody who had a say where they were born or who their parents were. I've never been anybody who had a life goal to be poor or on government assistance. A single mom may be able to make it without SNAP, but she's eligible, so she applies. Everybody says she's taking advantage of the system. However, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Gates, and others certainly don't need tax breaks, yet they take advantage of them because they're eligible. Nobody says anything. How about we change that? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thompson, Representative Pingree, and members of the House Ag Committee. Thank you for being here today and welcome to Maine. My name is Dave Colson. I own and operate New Leaf Farm in Durham, only about 8 miles from here. We've been on our property for 41 years, growing different crops, vegetables, fruit, hay, primarily selling to local markets. I was also a farm consultant for MOFCA for 10 years, and I'm currently the volunteer president for the Organic Farmers Association, which is a national organization representing organic farmers across the country. Domestic organic farmers across the country. Similar to Pennsylvania, Mr. Chairman, as you've heard, we rely heavily on dairy, timber, fruit, and vegetables. They're critical to Maine's economy. However, over the last few years, we've found weather challenges to be more and more extreme. At times it's too wet, other times it's too dry. The last 2 years couldn't be more opposite of each other. Last year I read an article, or this spring I read an article about last year that a record amount of hayland was harvested last year. Well, of course it was. It was a dry year. Everybody could get on every single piece of ground they owned, so it was all harvested. This year we've had so much rain, some in deluges that make it really impossible to get onto the soil. We're picking and choosing the high ground as we go around. We can't finish full fields. We do a little bit of it, hoping that soon, hopefully sometime this summer, we'll be able to get back to those other pieces and cut some hay there. And again, last year, it was a huge first cut of hay, but there really wasn't a second cut. It was so dry that there was really nothing there to even harvest. And then with the rain this year, we're about 4 to 6 weeks behind, which is causing all kinds of problems with haying equipment. Hay is now so fibrous, it binds up in the haying equipment, makes it really difficult to work. The disruptions are becoming more and more evident. Maine has always had wet and dry years, often lasting 2 or 3 weeks. But now they seem, some years, to have moved into longer and longer periods. Additionally, spring is warming up earlier, causing fruit buds to open earlier, but we still seem to have our frosts at around the same time. So for the last 2 years, I've lost significant amount of apples due to late season frost and buds that were already open. And then, of course, the dry years cause a strain on irrigation. We always consider Maine to be wet enough that we don't need to irrigate for the whole season. And so the ponds and the wells that we have can't last for 4-5 months of irrigation. This year in particular, because it's been wet so long, it's been hard to plant. It's been hard to till. Hard to make hay, as I said, and the smaller vegetable farms are in danger of having any crops to bring to market, and I'm really worried for livestock producers this winter. They're feeding out their grass now that they should be putting aside. So I have 3 requests. One is Chellie Pingree's Agricultural Resistance Act. OFA is behind that. We'd like to see more research into how and where to best build organic matter in soil for climate resilience. It's not simple. We don't completely understand all the complexities there. We suggest funding organic ag and extension initiative through the National Institute for Food and Agriculture, reauthorize SARE, create a new organic national program at ARS, and support state cooperative extension. Thank you very much.
Our next 3 will be Mary Ann Kinney from Kinney's Sugar House and Knox Ridge Farm, Judy Knapp from ADU USH Government Relations Manager, and Hannah Sempler, the CEO of Farm Drop US.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Thank you, Representative Pingree. I'm here for the Farm Bill in 2018. I made the trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with all 4 of the representatives that were in. I love the nod. Thank you for remembering. I met with Chellie Pingree. I met with Senator King, Senator Collins, and at the time, Representative Poliquin. We had an issue that was extremely important to the industry I serve in. My family owns and operates a 3-generation diversified farm in Waldo County. My husband and I, our biggest crop is maple syrup. Maple syrup is a single ingredient product. We tap trees, we reduce the sap down, comes in about 2% sugar, and we reduce it down to maple syrup, which is between 66 and 68 bricks or percent sugar in the product, and then we make our other value-added products from there. The FDA tried to put a nutrition facts label addition to our products, and it affected all these single ingredient products like maple syrup, honey, agave, molasses, and many more across the country. And Senator Collins at the time was the one who put the language in, but Representative Pingree worked with me very strongly. She's the reason that I went to DC, because she came to me. Her office came to me. Senator King's office, and we heard from Marge Kilkelly. She helped out with Senator King, spoke on the floor of the Senate to make sure that our products are not being forced into putting this language of added sugars. We don't add sugar, we are sugar. And yeah, funny, but not so funny. I actually had people come to me and tell me that they were proud that I was no longer adding sugar to my product because I make a wonderful product. I never add sugar. We have agritourism at our sugar house, and people come in and they want to know when we're adding the sugar to our maple syrup process, because we add a defoamer to keep the bubbles down while we're making maple syrup. They're wondering if that's when we're adding sugar. We use a diatomaceous earth as a filter aid. It's a fine white powder that is our filter press pulls. That's the actual filter, is the diatomaceous earth. The people actually asked us, is that when you're adding the sugar? We're not adding sugar. So added sugars on the labeling, the FDA tried to say that it was because the consumer needs to know they're adding sugar to their diet. Thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill, that the FDA was halted on this. But I noticed on the FDA's website, they are still trying to push this forward. So I ask that you put this back into the 2023 Farm Bill to protect our farmers that are producing these wonderful products. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity for all of us to speak to you today. Aid USA is Ahold Delhaize USA, the parent company of several brands, including Hannaford in the Northeast, and Giant and Stop and Shop and Food Lion, just so you know what that meant. As far as the industry, the supermarket industry and the Farm Bill, there's just a few things I want to relate to you that are important to us. One is to make permanent the prohibition of processing fees on EBT transactions. We feel this is very important for both the customers and the operators of supermarkets not to have these fees incorporated into our business models. We also want to protect SNAP choice so that consumers can purchase what they feel they want to buy in their local supermarkets, and utilize SNAP nutrition incentives to improve food and nutrition security. We're very much in favor of working with you to establish such programs. We want to ensure the SNAP online purchasing pilot program transitions to a permanent program. A lot of operators have put a lot of money and time into setting these pilots up. They like them, they're successful. We'd like that to remain permanent as well. And prioritize food waste reduction efforts. And I just want to let you know that the Hannaford brand, just this year alone in 5 states, we have 0 food going to landfills. That's been for the last couple of years. But also over 23 million pounds is diverted out of landfills. Just over 10 million went to hunger relief, and 13 million goes to recycling and to back to the farms to feed their livestock. Thank you.
And Hannah Semler. See, I get that name right. It's easy for me. Okay, we will move on. Our next speakers will be Travis Fogler, who's a dairy farmer, Jimmy Cushbraun from Maine Society of Land Surveyors, and Julianne Smith from the Maine Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Congresswoman Pingree and Chairman Thompson for hosting this session. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here before you. Be remiss if I didn't start by thanking you both for your support and work on the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. Greatly appreciate that, and certainly that policy change would be very important for the Maine and U.S. dairy industry, and more importantly, for the students that will receive that great nutrition. I'd like to support and see your continued support for the Dairy Safety Net and Risk Management Tools, the DMC. It's been very important for the industry, and would like to see that move forward. Would like to see lowered premiums and also updated production history that would be more realistic for our dairy farmers today. While the federal milk marketing order system is not under the Farm Bill, right now there's an industry issue with the current hire of Class 1 mover that is important enough. We feel it should be addressed in this year's Farm Bill. The current formula has cost dairy farmers $750 million during the pandemic and another $250 million in 2022. This year alone, that in July was $1.02 or hundredweight that was impacted to farmers. In August was $1.67 negative impact to dairy farmers. And there's going to be more coming in the future. So again, not Farm Bill, but very important. Would like to see it addressed if possible. Support the conservation programs. Would like to see them be fair for all family dairy farmers. Payment limits are certainly an issue on many of the farmers. Our family farms, 9 family members, I'm 5th generation, currently milking about 1,200 cows. We easily reach that limit. And while useful and impactful on our farm, there could be greater impact, and which would allow greater impact on the environment as well. And on the SNAP nutrition program, certainly stand behind and fully support the robust Farm Bill, and SNAP included in that. Thank you for the opportunity and listening.
Good evening, Jimmy Corbin here for Maine Society of Land Surveyors. Just choosing to listen today and support all these wonderful speakers. Thank you.
And Julianne.
Good afternoon. My name is Julianne Smith. I'm the Executive Director of Maine Farm Bureau. I hope most of you are familiar with Farm Bureau nationally in your own states as well. I wanted to speak just briefly about what's going on in Maine instead of specifics to this Farm Bill. In Maine, our cost of production, 23% of that is labor. The national average for cost of production for labor throughout the United States is 10%. Our transportation costs are much higher because we are the end of the line for getting our product here. So our food is much more expensive for the citizens of Maine. It's also much more expensive for us to transport food and food products out of the state of Maine. We have lost 25% of our dairy farms in the last year alone. We have lost a significant amount of farms. It will be very interesting to see what the NASS statistics are when they come out in the next couple of years. But I think where we were at 7,600 farms at the last NASS statistics, which I believe were 2018, I would be surprised if we had more than 4,000 farms left in the state of Maine. We have seen so many farms go out of business because of the cost of production in Maine is so much higher than the rest of the country. So we can't really identify one particular program or one particular area that this Farm Bill could help Maine farmers with more than another. All of it is so critical to us. We need more help. We need more support. We need to be able to access more labor, whether that's through H-2A or other programs through our university that provide training and relief programs for our dairy farmers. We have some of the eldest or most experienced, as they like to call themselves, but in age, we have some of the oldest farmers in the country, and there's no one coming up behind them. Generationally, we're losing a lot of the farms because the next generation sees how much struggle and suffer their parents experience, and they find a job off farm. So I appreciate your time in coming to Maine. It's a really beautiful and wonderful and unique place. We grow lots of different things. We have a lot of diversity here. It's a wonderful farming community. We have incredible land, incredible soils, but we need to help these farmers stay in business. It's a matter of we need food locally in case there is ever another pandemic. Our local farms are really what helped us. With the transportation issues, we saw a lot of empty grocery store shelves. So it was the local farmers that were able to provide food to our communities. But if they can't stay in business, if it's not profitable and not manageable and they can't have access to labor, then there isn't anything for our state in the future, which is, I would think, a matter of national security, really. So I appreciate you coming to Maine. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
And with that, due to a very robust schedule that the chair and the committee have, that's going to conclude our comments. I would love if the chairman or any members of the committee would like to make any final remarks.
Here, oh, beautiful. Before I begin, I need to clear something up, because when I walked in here today, a gentleman came up to me and he grabbed me and said, "Congressman McGovern, I just want to tell you I was a big supporter of your dad's." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And I'm sitting up here thinking, I think he thinks my dad was George McGovern, who ran president against Richard Nixon. And while I did work for him, I should tell the gentleman, I can't see if he's still here, that my dad, Walter McGovern, owned a package store in Worcester, Massachusetts. And so if you really meant him and the beer, the wine, the liquor you saw, and you were a big supporter, the store is still there. So I think, yeah, in Worcester, absolutely. And let me thank Chellie Pingree, who I have enormous respect and affection for. I love working with her, and I want to thank you for sending her to Congress. I mean, it really makes me proud to be part of the House of Representatives to serve with her. And Chairman Thompson, who is now in charge of the Agriculture Committee, who has this big responsibility of trying to see whether we get a farm bill. I appreciate his generosity to me and to being here today and doing these listening sessions. This is really important. And Representative Baird, the same thing. You know, we may be of different political parties, but you know, I'm a believer you don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. And the something you agree on, we got to come together and get it done. But to me, when I think of the Farm Bill, to me it's about our values. And that's why I appreciated all the comments here today, because it really spoke to your values. You know, Massachusetts is not too different in many respects when it comes to agriculture to Maine. I mean, we have small and medium-sized farms. We don't have these gigantic mega farms. And for whatever reason, we never seem to be able to take advantage of all the programs that are meant to help farmers, you know, in challenging times. We're experiencing terrible flooding right now, and our farmers don't know what to do because they don't have crop insurance, they don't have this insurance or that insurance. And by the way, the last thing they want to hear is another loan program. They have loans out to their eyeballs. They're done with that, right? I mean, but we want them to stay there. We want them to not just survive, we want them to thrive. And so we need to figure out how to adjust some of the programs and initiatives in the Farm Bill so that they can serve not just the big farms, but also the smaller and more medium-sized farms. We care deeply about conservation, and farmers, you know, all over the country do. I mean, you are the best environmentalists that we have, and we got to listen to you more. But the other thing I want to say, and I'll just end with this, I mean, one of my passions, you know, has been about food insecurity and hunger. I mean, we live in the richest country in the history of the world, and we have tens of millions of people who don't know where their next meal is going to come from. We heard today about the food insecurity right here in Maine. Well, there's not a congressional district in America that is hunger-free. And I'm ashamed of that, quite frankly. And I was glad that when, during the pandemic, we boosted up the SNAP benefits. Not so happy that when those benefits ran out. And by the way, the average SNAP benefit, when you figure it out, is on average of about $2 per person per meal. And the notion that people just are dying to get on SNAP, like it's some sort of a great thing to be on, for that measly benefit. My Dunkin' Donuts coffee today, I found a Dunkin' Donuts here, my Dunkin' Donuts coffee today, was over $2. And it was just a black coffee. I mean, so the reality is the benefit is inadequate. The notion that we might curb the benefit or add other requirements or hoops for people to jump through, more work requirements, we just can't have that. I mean, the deal is that the majority of people on SNAP already do work. For those who are on SNAP and not, life is complicated. And by the way, we need to figure this out in a way not just to kind of not make hunger worse. I'd like to have a farm bill that's not just about not increasing hunger. I want a farm bill that's going to move us toward ending hunger in this country. And as we heard earlier, when the SNAP benefit was boosted up, our local grocery stores did better. Our mom and pop stores did better. Our farmers did better. That farmers and SNAP are not at odds with one another. They complement each other. We need farmers to grow food. We need food to live. And I say I want to support a farm bill. I hope we can get a farm bill that I can support. But I have to tell you, we just passed the Pentagon budget close to $1 trillion. The Pentagon is one of the least audited agencies in the government. I didn't vote for it, but it's too damn big. But anyway, it passed, right? And then we're told we don't have the money to help more people afford decent, nutritious food. I can't figure that out. It doesn't make any sense to me. If this is about national security has to include more than the number of bombs we have. It has to make sure we have nobody who's hungry in this country. We have farmers that can survive and thrive in this country and to earn a decent living. And then the final thing I'm going to say, because I just got this news. So what I love about Maine, sometimes I always like to think Massachusetts is ahead of everybody, but you are actually ahead of us in providing universal free meals to every kid in your school system here. And guess what? We're doing the same thing in Massachusetts today, so we're following your lead. So thank you very much. Thank you for having us here today, and I'll yield back to Chellie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate you going around the country holding these listening sessions, and I've had the opportunity to be with you on a few of those, and like the one that we have here, I've learned a great deal. I want to thank Representative Pingree for inviting us here, and I must tell her, I want to tell you and share with the audience, my wife and I, yesterday evening, I guess, we ordered lobster. And we're from the Midwest, and we don't have a lot of lobster in the Midwest. But this order came with 2 lobsters, okay? And my wife, as she was dismembering the one, the other one was sitting there on the plate, and both eyes seemed to be looking at me. So I don't know. I learned a lot about that, but I appreciate what we did learn, and I appreciate learning about the aquaculture and fishing and some of the things that you're doing here in this state. But I've been in agriculture all my life, and so I just share with you that I think we've got committee members. Mr. McGovern is an example but I think we have committee members that are very passionate about agriculture. I know from my standpoint or perspective, agriculture is the foundation of a lot of rural communities. And so any help and support that we can do to make sure we preserve that, I think, is important. And so I think you have a lot of other members that feel that same way. I worked in extension at one time, and so I have a great passion for extension folks. But, you know, rather than belabor a lot of discussion here, I would just say that I subscribe to the idea that the best government is the one that governs the least. I think most farm families, they're very passionate about agriculture. And I did find, too, that fishing and lobster production and so on, or fishing, they're very territorial, too. And we're territorial about our land in Indiana. So there are some similarities. And so I would just conclude with this idea. I am concerned about some of the agencies and their government overreach that ends up restricting your ability as producers to move forward. But I'm a strong advocate for research. I think that's an important aspect, and I don't care what size operation you're doing. I think we ought to base those decisions on science and research. I love the idea that agriculture is involved in conservation. We've been doing that for years. After all, that 6 to 8 inches of topsoil is our lifeblood, and it's a living, breathing organism, and I think soil health and making sure we take care of that land is extremely important. One of the things that, or maybe two I hear, I guess, I would combine them, but risk management and crop insurance has come out at, I think, every meeting that you have, GT. So there's a focus. You know, with the amount of dollars that are involved in agriculture in these days, producers and ranchers need that safety net in order to survive some of these tougher times. And so with that, I really am a strong advocate for agriculture, and God bless America.
Well, thank you very much. I know we didn't get to everybody today, and I feel bad about that. Just we have a limited amount of time, so thank you to everybody who took the time to come and speak, and everyone who took the time to come and didn't get a chance to speak. I hope I'll get a chance to check in with all of you and certainly hear from all of you, and I hope you submit anything that you had in writing so that my colleagues can hear from all of you as well. I'm really, like, as I said earlier, I'm so blessed to have the colleagues who chose to come here. Agriculture Committee is a big committee. You can't get everybody to come all the time, but this is really a very exceptional group. Mr. Costa, who had to leave early, is an almond farmer from California, a very senior member on the committee, so he's seen a lot of farm bills and spent a lot of time here. Dr. Baird, who I really enjoy serving with, is not only a distinguished member of the community, the agriculture community, he is, we very much appreciate his service to the country. He was injured in Vietnam, and I think we're all just really honored to have him with us. He's also a doctor who specialized in the inner workings of hogs. And if you ever get a chance to really talk to him about a pig digestion system, we can all geek out over that. And he visited the pigs on our farm and gave them a little blessing. So thank you for that. Jim McGovern, I'm so pleased to serve with. He's a ranking member on nutrition. He's the head of the Hunger Caucus. He and I work together on food as medicine issues. As you can see, he's brilliant, articulate, passionate. He is also the chair of the Rules Committee. Or no, ranking member, I forget, we're in the minority. So we're called ranking members, and Republicans are chairs, and but he has served there for a long time, and so every amendment in Congress has to go through his committee. So he puts in more late nights, more difficult conversations, and deals with some of the worst issues that come before us. And the chair, as you've seen, is gracious and knowledgeable, cares deeply about all of these issues, has put in so much time doing these listening sessions, and he's not done. And most of us can only join once in a while, but he is there at every one. All three of these colleagues have their spouses who have come with them, who also have shared in our time here, and that's just a huge commitment to the work that we're doing. So one of the farmers we were talking to today mentioned to me that he'd looked at our website, and I suggest you can see all the bills. Some of them were mentioned today that I've had a chance to work on. They're on our website, our Farm Bill priorities, our discussion of how broad the Farm Bill is and how much of our rural life it really impacts, from broadband to housing to trade. Just so much of what we're doing is there. And he said to me, I looked, and most of your priorities are my priorities, and I really appreciate that. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, my priorities are his priorities and many of your priorities, because I've had the benefit of working with so many of you for so long. You're articulate about what you do, you're hardworking, you're knowledgeable. You make sure that we know everything that you need us to know, from added sugar on maple syrup to how the SNAP benefit program works in Maine and the innovations that all of you are doing. So I'm really just blessed by the opportunity to work with all of the people in Maine working with our food systems and agriculture, and really the enormous amount of work since almost 50 years ago, when I went for that first MOFGA meeting and read my first book on sustainable agriculture, and how far we have come, how big the market has grown for locally grown produce, how much we've shifted this system and really improved our own food system in Maine, and then all of your stories of how far we have to go, the challenges of PFAS, the challenges of crop insurance, the challenges of our SNAP benefit and our feeding programs. We have so much work to do, but really have been doing a great job, coming a long way, and I do think we have lessons to teach all the other states. So this is our chance. I'm glad we got a chance to do that, and I think now that they've been to Maine, had a lobster, they're going to be coming back all the time to talk to you. So thank you all for being here.
Chellie, thank you so much. You've been a great host, and thank you to Jim and Jim and Jim. Just fine colleagues that I'm just proud and honored to be able to work with as we prepare and work towards this 2023 Farm Bill. And how about a big hand for our moderator, Hannah? She had the toughest job. It just shows you extension comes through one more time.
And my dad's name was Jim.
There
so
you
I feel
go.
like I'm part
perfect.
of the club. So.
That's perfect. Big thanks to the Freeport School for having us here, allowing us to use this wonderful performing arts theater and the facility here. Thank you to all of you who took the opportunity to step up to the microphone and share your thoughts. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all that attended, and encourage you to keep that conversation going. But the clock is ticking, so the sooner we would get any kind of additional input, absolutely the better. And I'm going to ask for one more hand for all of the staff that we have here that quite frankly made this work so smoothly. They are the hidden heroes that are in the background to make us successful. This is, by my calculations, this is my 50th state visit in the past 2.5 years. Yeah, well, you're number 50. We got about 5 more that are scheduled here, I think, and maybe more after that. We'll see. But it's so important, and it helps prepare us to achieve the goal. And it's a goal I've talked about for the past number of years. At the end of the day, and I think I mentioned it at the beginning, but I'm going to just keep saying this till we make it happen, that this Farm Bill is one that will be bipartisan, bicameral, highly effective, or on time and highly effective. Now, the time part, we only control the House. We do not control the Senate. But we're doing our job of preparing, and I think we are going to make this highly effective. And why is that? Because of all of your voices, all of your input that you provide today and will continue to provide. American agriculture is truly defined as science, technology, and innovation. And it's an amazing industry, right? American agriculture has increased in productivity 279% since the 1940s. Now, I'm absolutely convinced if we do this farm bill and make it highly effective, we can increase from the 40s to 400%. Yeah, because we just live in a blessed time in terms of the resources we have in terms of science, technology, and innovation. I also want to say we hear a lot about climate, and there are no better climate heroes anywhere in the world than the American farmer, rancher, and forester. When you look at the data points that are out there that talks about really what they're talking about is American agriculture, whether you're talking livestock, whether you're talking crops, whether you're talking trees, and you all have a lot of trees here. We're a little proud of our trees in Pennsylvania, Penn's Woods. If those three things of agriculture combined, plus processing, how we do processing today, we sequester 6.1 gigatons of carbon annually. There's nobody does it better anywhere in the world, largely because of our science, technology, and innovation, and because of our efficiency. That sounds like a lot, and quite frankly, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around what a gigaton actually is. But I do know, I was told by a colleague of ours from California who couldn't make it here today, Mr. Lamoffa looked it up, and the only point I remember he said was that the abbreviation for gigaton is GT. I kind of like that. It's kind of a big deal, right? But if you look at that research and dig deeper into it, you'll find that we actually sequester today 10.1% more carbon than what we emit on those lands, which means that the American farmer, and I use that broadly to include ranchers and foresters and processors, we're not carbon criminals, they're carbon heroes. And so just really thankful. You know, one of the truisms here, if farm families fail, every American family fails. And so that's why we have to do our jobs and make it happen. There's just so much we learned here. I know takeaways, and I'm going to miss something, but the forestry, congratulations, the first mill in the United States of America that's going to be able to take those residual from forestry and make it into wonderful insulation. I think that's incredible. It's a new market that helps us keep timbering. When we timber, we plant new trees, and I look at that like we raised 3 teenagers, they're fully grown now, and I can tell you when they're teenagers, they eat a whole lot more than what we do as adults, and that's what happens with trees, right? They eat more carbon in the younger generation. So congratulations on that. The aquaculture was fascinating. What a great lesson. We've done 50 listening sessions, and this is the first one that pointed out aquaculture, and that's that farming, and that's why it's important to do that. And just all the things that have been mentioned today, it's just it's an amazing list. Quite frankly, I carry my memory with me, so the older I get, the more I carry it, and got copious notes and just good stuff for the Farm Bill. I would just want to continue to encourage you to be at the table, and that means if you've got written documents, we'll take them. Or you can forward them. If you make sure the Congresswoman gets them, she'll share them with me, we'll share them with the committee, and I want to encourage that. I will say the clock is ticking. This current Farm Bill does expire the end of September, and I think we're in a good position to do our job, depending on a couple unknown variables here with availability of floor time and quite frankly the Senate. But this committee will do its job in a timely manner. And once again, Chellie, thank you so much for hosting us.
And I do have just a couple housekeeping comments. If you did bring written comments, and again, did not have the chance to share them, please leave them at the table where you registered. If you can leave them there, we'll make sure the committee gets them. If somebody lost a pair of glasses, they were brought up to the podium. I will leave them here for you to get. And again, thank you to the committee. Thank you to everybody who participated here today. I wish you all a wonderful summer, a wonderful harvest, and if you're going to go to the hayfield like I am, here's hoping for a good hay week as well. Thank you all.